In the spring of 2025, the house on Ocean Avenue squatted under a sky the color of bruised flesh. It was a place of morbid stillness, a sepulchre of forgotten sins, and Jane Harlan was at war with its backyard. At 35, Jane lived by a primal code, her spirit forged in the blast furnace of 80s thrash metal. She was a writer by trade, a debunker of spectral myths, yet she had chosen this place, this nexus of American folklore, as a grim sabbatical. Now her shovel was a weapon, each thrust into the abnormally dense Amityville soil an act of savage defiance. The earth did not yield. It resisted as if she were digging into the sinew of some cyclopean buried thing. Her smartphone, resting on the rotted porch rail, blared Metallica's Ride the Lightning, a fragile ward of electric fury against the yard's surreptitious malaise. The house itself, with its baleful quarter moon windows, watched her. It was a thing of angles that seemed wrong, a non-Euclidean geometry of malice that warped the pleasant spring air into a miasma of despondency. Riley, her sister 18 and a universe away in spirit, leaned on a rake. She was a creature of intellect and anxiety, a peer counselor who navigated the maelstroms of others' minds while wrestling her own. A TikTok trend had resurrected the analog warmth of the Walkman, and hers was a lifeline, seeping the melancholic synths of Depeche Mode into her ears. She armored herself in the cathode ray glow of 80s sci-fi, her worldview shaped by the paranoid corridors of The Thing and the rain-slicked dystopia of Blade Runner. This gardening is a dodge, Jane. Riley's voice was thin, failing to carry in the oppressive atmosphere. She pulled the headphones down. You're ghosting the Amityville blog post. What's wrong? Afraid you'll find a real wraith? The Thing says trust is a total curse, metalhead. Jane paused, driving the shovel deep. Sweat cut through the grime on her arms. Her faded Ghostbusters shirt, a badge of a simpler, cleaner obsession, clung to her. Spooked? She grunted, the rhythm of her digging matching the drums of Master of Puppets. This town's as fake as your androids. This yard, though, it's a different beast. It's like Caddyshack's vermin, but hiding talents. Your 80s rom-coms are bleaker than my synths, you wistful romantic, Riley retorted, her gaze drifting to the glaring windows. Her loyalty to Jane was a fierce protective thing, but the house eroded her nerve. It feels wrong here, like poltergeist. We're gate crashing, Jane. We've disturbed the slumber of something that never wanted to be woken. Jane's laugh was a sharp, brittle bark. They're here, she mocked, but her own voice was hollow. He felt it too, an unseen vigilance, a chilling, morbid pressure on her nape, as if she were being observed by something incapable of true sight. The shovel struck. It was not the clean clink of stone or the dull thud of wood. It was a grotesque, wet chalk, like striking a bone buried in sodden clay. Jane recoiled. Riley took a step forward, her Walkman dangling, silent. The air congealed the pleasant scent of spring loam, instantly replaced by a fetid ancient stench, a rancid decay that spoke of profane tombs and unhallowed rites. God, what is that? Riley choked, covering her mouth. Jane knelt, scraping the black earth away. It was a marker flat and dark, made of a material that felt porous, almost like petrified flesh. It was etched with sigils, native in origin, that seemed to quiver, absorbing the flat gray light. They were not symbols of honor. They were sigils of binding. Native burial ground, Riley gasped, her hands trembling, her breath catching. Jane, we're straight up cursed. This is the forsaken outpost. Just a stone, nerd, Jane said, her voice a strained whisper. She touched it. A cold more profound than any winter lanced up her arm. From the marker, a susurrus slithered into their minds, a psychic vibration, ancient and impossibly vast. It was not a voice, but an intention. Disturb and bind. The trap, impassive and patient, its hunger a suffocating dread that had waited for millennia in the polluted soil, was sprung. That night the house was a crypt. The air was too thick to breathe. Sisters sat in the living room, the silence broken only by the hum of the refrigerator, a sound that seemed hideously intrusive. The knock was a violation, a somatic physical blow against the house's rotted frame. Jane looked at Riley, whose face had gone pale, a lunar pallor under the dim light. Jane rose, her muscles coiled with a primal tension. She looked through the peephole and saw their neighbor, the one from 2 doors down. She opened the door. He stood under the porch light, a man in his 50s, but his eyes were ancient. They were clouded, milky orbs of madness, reflecting a grotesque inner landscape. He was a vessel, his spirit hollowed out and filled with a red-drenched impulse. In his hands a shotgun, held with an unnerving familiar calm. The echo demands blood, he rasped. The voice was not his. It was a layered, guttural thing from a primeval abyss, the sound of the murderer's echo that had stained this land, given flesh once more. The first blast was a catastrophic ruin of sound and force. Jane was thrown backward, a red flower of annihilation blooming on her chest. Riley screamed a thin, piercing sound and turned to run. The second blast tore her shoulder from her body, spinning her into a heap of shattered bone and ruined flesh. Darkness consumed them. It was not an emptiness. It was a place, a maelstrom of non-Euclidean geometry, a cosmic undertow dragging their vacant souls into a black, oily sea of indifference. They were dissolving, their essence eroding. Jane's mind wailed, I am nothing. Riley felt her memories, herself flaking away like old paint, and in that void they felt it, a psychic tearing. Deep beneath the house on Ocean Avenue, a great ancient root of power, anchored in the profane tomb, was severed from the land. This vast, indifferent entity, this impassive trap, was suddenly untethered. It had been disturbed, and now it was free. It sought new anchors, and these two flickering, dying souls were the first tethers it could find. It slammed into them. It was not a possession. It was an imprint, a binding. When the medics, summoned by a neighbor who heard the shots, shocked them back to life on the blood-soaked floor, the sisters awoke with a synchronized, agonizing gasp. The medics called their survival a marvel. The wounds which should have been fatal were weaving shut, the flesh knitting with an unnatural, terrifying speed. The sisters felt claws beneath their skin, veins twisting like spectral serpents. The haunting had not ended. It had found its vessels. It had become mobile. They fled in the night, the hospital a sterile prison they couldn't bear. In a cramped, suffocating Airbnb miles away, the true horror began. Jane's mind, once her fortress, was now a sepulchre. It was no longer her own. She felt them pacing in the underground of her new fragmented psyche. A bestial, primal fury, the clot-born warrior. A cold, precise, occult malice, John Ketchum. A red-drenched, annihilating impulse, the murderer's echo. And a tittering, porcine, uncanny giggling, Jody. Riley, they're tearing me apart, Jane whimpered, clutching her journal, her knuckles white. She was a crazy Jane, a walking poltergeist, and the personas were already fighting for the wheel. Catch him. He's in my head, he's me. I'm not your sister anymore. Riley's curse was a different, more insidious torment. It was not an invasion from within, but a hunger from without. Her skin blazed, her hands ached with a terrible hollow need to touch, to connect, to fill the void. It's rooted, Jane, she whispered, staring at her ungloved hands, which seemed alien to her. But it's empty. It's a siphon. It wants objects. It wants signatures. I'll dissolve, Jane. I'll be overwritten. I'll be just a ghost. The void, now bound to them, hissed its new terms in the silence of their room. You are not haunted. Siphon. They fled in their beat-up hatchback, Jane's Slayer tape's thundering angel of death. But the music was a thin, tinny thing against the cacophony of whispers that now followed them. The Amityville curse was no longer on Ocean Avenue. It was in the car with them, an unseen, morbid passenger. Chinatown's neon was a smear of garish color, a dying star in the New York night. The air was heavy, not just with urban grime, but with the familiar rancid decay of the Amityville basement. The rot, the psychic stain, now seeped from the sisters, poisoning the pavement, clinging to the market stalls like a crumbling estate. Jane, her face a mask of primal tension, tried to force normalcy. She hunted for Judas Priest vinyl in a retro shop, the music her only anchor. Your synths are vampire dirges, Riley, she taunted, her voice a low, Howardian growl. Find some grit, nerd. Better than crying over just one of the guy's sappy romance, you dreamer, Riley retorted, her hands jammed deep in her pockets, her new gloves a desperate shield. Her poltergeist spark was fading, replaced by a morbid despondency. This place, it's just like the house. It can smell us. Jane's eyes narrowed. Who you gonna call, sis? Nobody, Jane, Riley whispered, pulling her hood tighter. In the thing, nobody trusts anybody. I don't even trust myself. I'm terrified to even breathe wrong. A shimmer in an alley, dark and reeking, caught Riley's eye. It was a small, forgotten shrine to Bruce Lee. On it sat a pair of nunchucks, gleaming with a faint, unhallowed light. They were void planted, a veiled snare masked as homage, quivering with a sentient, leather-like tissue. Pulled by the siphon's terrible hunger, Riley found her hand moving, ungloved. Riley, no, Jane started. She touched them. The siphon surged. It was not the chaotic tearing Jane endured. It was a clean, agonizing, orderly burn. her skin seared, veins twisting like iron cords, as a spiritual blueprint flooded her. It was a torrent of non-her memories, a catastrophic download. Jeet Kune Do. The absolute devastating mastery of the form. Taoist wisdom, be water, my friend. The iron discipline, the philosophy, the defiant thumb to nose gesture. Riley staggered, her body moving with an alien fluid grace. The world snapped into sharp, terrible focus. Her anxiety, her ADHD, her very self, all was instantly brutally smothered by a profound icy calm. Jane, she gasped, her voice strained, the cadence subtly changed. He's rooted, his calm, it's swallowing me. I'm not me, I'm just a ghost. A robbery erupted. Three thugs, their faces etched with oppressive foreboding, knives out, encircling a vendor under the flickering neon. The stress, the violence, broke Jane's fragile control. The murderer's echo saw its chance and slammed into the driver's seat of her mind. Traitor's blaze, Jane roared. The alley changed. The laws of physics fractured. The neon of Chinatown sputtered, and in their place the ghastly, glowing orbs of the Amityville house bled through the fabric of reality. The air, thick with rancid decay, screamed. Gallow-like silhouettes warped from the fire escapes. Jane's face split, flesh peeling like withered bark, her eyes black pits of ancient, annihilating madness. The house was projecting from her. She was the mobile curse. Patrons shrieked. Witch! The void hissed. Forfeit yourself, haunted. Jane, no. Riley shouted. But it wasn't just Riley. It was Riley Clee. The siphon's calm cut through her panic like a surgeon's blade. Empty your mind, the blueprint whispered. Flow to Metallica. She flowed like liquid. Lee's strikes were not her own. They were precise, economical, brutal. The thugs were disarmed in a flurry of blows that seemed to bend time. Riley moved with a grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. She pinned Jane against the brick wall, her hand a rigid blade against her sister's throat. You are not this fiend, Riley commanded, her voice a blend of her own terror and Lee's Taoist focus. You are my sister. You're my Caddyshack zealot, not Ketchum. Clear your mind. Be the orb, Jane. She was the anchor. Jane's flesh wove shut. She gasped, her own eyes, wild and human, returning. Damn, Riley, you're Enter the Dragon. Riley stumbled back, her hands shaking, the icy calm receding, leaving her hollowed out, a vessel drained. It's eternal, Jane. I'm losing me. I'm just a shell, she cried, fumbling for her Walkman, a desperate real ward against the horror. A high-tech biotech drone, its lens pulsing with a faint void taint, hovered in the shadows, its red light a single baleful eye. In a sterile crypt of a lab, Dr. Victor Crane, CEO of Novellum Biotech, watched the feed. His charm was a mask for a bottomless, Poe-like avarice. Incredible, he murmured, steepling his fingers. The haunted project's the anomaly. The siphon absorbs external signatures. It's the world's first mobile, weaponizable haunting. A psychic plague and its antidote. Track them. Data is power. I want them both. Glendale, Queens, near Machpelah Cemetery, offered a brief, suffocating haven in a friend's loft. The campfire scene was one of morbid introspection. Jane sat cross-legged on the floor, her phone blasting Slayer, trying to use the chaotic noise to drown the other chaos, the whispers from her own underground. But Ketchum was loud, and Jody's titters were a constant, maddening irritation. Riley was worse. She sat staring at her reflection in her phone's dark screen, her gloved hands trembling. The echo of Bruce Lee's calm was a prison. It warred with her natural anxiety, creating a dissonant, fractured state. Jane, I'm vanishing, she muttered, eyes damp. I'm just his voice, his calm. It's not me. I'm not your nerd. You're my sci-pilot, Riley, Jane said, her voice a low growl, her eyes closed. No voids claiming you, not today or ever. You're my anchor. You hear me? But who's yours, Jane? Riley whispered, looking at her sister, who was vibrating with contained, primal energy. They walked to Machpelah Cemetery, the air thick and still. The stones quivered with a primeval menace. Jody, the spectral swine persona in Jane's head, stirred with a grotesque, childish glee, sensing the isolation. Riley, distracted, her mind a confusing maelstrom of poltergeist quotes and Jeet Kune Do forms, stumbled. Her gloved hand shot out to brace herself, but the glove snagged, and her bare skin brushed against a pair of void-planted, antique handcuffs, shimmering with a cosmic, verdigris taint on Houdini's grave. The siphon surged, a new catastrophic download. Escape mastery, showmanship, a burning anti-spiritualist zeal. Bold, arrogant gestures. His feats, Riley gasped, her eyes narrowing, her bones grating like rusted iron. A new persona, a new blueprint, slammed into her, fighting the Bruce Lee signature for dominance. Jane, it's too much. I'm just a ghost now. Riley, the cemetery gates, heavy and iron, slammed shut with a sound like a crypt door. Crane's goons, four of them, slinking like crows, barred the exit, tasers sparking. The murderer's echo in Jane's mind screamed with ecstatic red fury. Slay them all. No, Jane yelled, clutching her head as the persona tried to take the wheel. Her flesh rippled, blood stains blooming on her shirt like spectral lesions, madness splintering her reflection in a puddle. Riley, I am fading. Ketchum's in my skull. Help me. Riley looked at the locked gate, then at the goons. Her mind was a battlefield. The calm of Lee was at war with the manic, obsessive flair of Houdini. Her own anxiety surged, a third terrified voice in the psychic war. No chains bind us, she shouted, her voice suddenly shockingly theatrical. She didn't pick the lock, she simply flowed toward it, her fingers dancing with a showman's grace, metal twisting hideously. The lock sprang open. Jane, she screamed, her voice now a warring chorus of three. She ran to her sister, who was convulsing, fighting the echo. You're my metal zealot, not this killer, she pleaded, quoting Poltergeist. Stay in the light. Find the light. She donned her gloves, her hands shaking, her duality rending her mind. The crazy Jane in front of her was losing. The siphon was fracturing. Jane saw the panic in her sister's eyes, the grotesque, alien way her head tilted with Houdini's stage-ready arrogance. The echo of her own curse was mirrored in Riley. Jane, the anchor, had to act. She grabbed her sister's shoulders, her own body racked with the tremors of her internal fight. Hey, hey, Jane forced the words out through Ketchum's snarls. You're my nerd, my Blade Runner zealot. Not his puppet, not his, you hear me? It was the lifeline. The showman's posture and Riley's shoulders deflated. The icy calm of Lee subsided. The trembling, terrified, real Riley surfaced. God, Jane, she whispered, her gloved hands grasping Jane's shirt. He was so loud. I know, Jane panted, shoving her sister toward the open gate. They all are. They fled the cemetery, the goons in baffled pursuit, vanishing into the sprawl of Queens. Two sisters inextricably bound by a mobile ancient plague, one a vessel of warring internal chaos, the other a hollow siphon, terrified of the external order that threatened to erase her. The hunt was on.